Well, hello everyone. I would like to start to thank everyone for coming today. This is the third session of Plataforma Talks this week. And we are doing this to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Plataforma. This is a series of debates that we are doing to talk a little bit about Macau's development and how can the networks that Macau has and we can create can even help further advance Macau towards an international status. In this specific debate, what we are going to talk about is the academic and cultural networks that Macau can do and that Macau also already has in order to achieve these objectives. In that sense, we invited today Agnes Wam, former journalist, lawmaker, and currently the director of Center for Macau Studies at the University of Macau, and Priscilla Roberts, which is a British-born historian, educated at King's College, Cambridge, and from which she holds a BA and a PhD in history. Since she arrived to Macau, she also has developed a particular interest to the history of Macau and also the global significance that Macau has and the Portuguese-speaking countries. In this sense, I would like to start my first question with you, Priscilla, if you don't mind. I think that since the pandemic, there has been a strengthening of the internationalization narrative of local universities. And I would like to ask has it always been a goal of the local universities to have international status? Is it a more recent movement, and did this concept evolve over time?
Well, going back to the founding of Macau's first modern university, it was envisaged what was the University of East Asia, which opened its doors in 1981. Which opened its doors in 1981, was from the very beginning envisaged as a highly international university. At the time, there was some debate over what its name should be, and the founders, who were three Hong Kong businessmen, who were assisted by a team of people from Macau, from Hong Kong and beyond, decided that there was no point in having a university that was not international, that putting international in a university's title was unnecessary. And I've actually seen the discussion of that. And so to set up a university in Macau, which was a rather small and at that time not terribly wealthy place, they actually called on assistance from the university sector in Hong Kong. They had as head of their planning committee Bernard Meller, who had been registrar at Hong Kong U for a great many years, getting it back on its feet after the problems of World War II when it stopped operating. He was extremely well connected, particularly across the Commonwealth network of universities. They brought in as their first rector Shui Xiaosheng, a professor of government and public administration from Chinese U, who had actually been rector of Nanyang University in Singapore for 3 years, and who was very much plugged into networks right across Southeast Asia in government and public administration, and played a key role in 2 or 3 of these networks. I've spent quite a lot of my time tracking down proceedings of conferences of something called Europa, which was the Eastern Regional Organization of Public Administration, set up in the 1960s. This was only one of several that he was involved in. So he was able to call on networks across Southeast Asia. He also had very good French connections. He got a PhD from the University of Geneva. And he also developed close links with the Portuguese-speaking universities, with the assistance, of course, of the Portuguese government in Macau. So it was a really international setup. The Portuguese government, they didn't have much money, so they provided the site and some scholarships and some financial assistance, but they saw this new university as one of the keystones of their soft power in Asia, and particularly in connection with China. So right from the beginning, they provided first one, and then two, and eventually three visiting academics by 1988. And the university was actually officially opened with several hundred visiting academics, including over 100 vice-chancellors, presidents and rectors from overseas universities. It was set up deliberately. That event took place not because the university had actually really opened its doors. It was still a building site on the top of the hill, which today is CityU, but because the Association of Commonwealth Universities was meeting in Hong Kong, and so Stanley Ho put all the vice-chancellors and deputy vice-chancellors and all the others who were attending on one of his ferries and put them up in a hotel in Macau, and they held the big opening ceremony in the Jai Alai Center because it was the only place big enough at the time in Macau for such a big gathering. So it was envisaged as being highly international. It attracted a huge range of academic staff of different nationalities, including some contributed by the French government and the Japanese government, as well as the Portuguese government. And Asa Briggs, who had been very much associated with the Open University in the UK and was in fact its third chancellor, wrote a preface to the history of its first 5 or 6 years, saying, "I am convinced that universities are at their strongest when they are outward rather than inward-looking both to the local and to the international community." The founders felt a need to balance the local community, Portugal, China, where they sent their first delegation within a year of the university opening its doors, Hong Kong and the Commonwealth. And so the university attracted, I think, a range of about 15 different nationalities, at least by the mid-80s, including visiting professors funded by DARD as well, and eventually Fulbrights, people from Princeton in Asia. It was remarkably international in those first few years. And they went even further by bringing in, as the second rector, Paul Lin Ta Kwong, who he was a very well-connected Canadian Chinese. His father was the first Chinese Canadian bishop, Anglican bishop. He'd gone back to China in 1949, 1950 after studying at Harvard and Tufts and other places, and he had exceptionally good connections within what I would call the left-leaning international community, people like Joseph Needham and Han Suin. He was also very well connected. He'd gone back to Canada in the early 60s. He knew Zhou Lai. He and his wife were both close to Sun Qingling. He corresponded with her. So he brought an extra dimension to Macau, and brought in Henry Kissinger, Pierre Trudeau, very well-known Chinese scholars, to give lectures and get honorary degrees. So for the less than 2 years that he was rector, the university really did host quite a number of fairly spectacular and very high-profile events. And also that boosted its connections in Canada, which had already been pretty good. They had close links with UBC and brought in a number of Canadian academics to teach here in the first few years. So I would say that up to 1988, the university prided itself on being very international and bringing in people from all over to teach, and also bringing in students from Macau, from Hong Kong, but also from Southeast Asia, and developing connections with Portugal, with China, and around the world. And that was the vision that was very much pushed by some of the people involved in its early years.
That's thank you. That's a very
Sorry,
thorough.
Yeah, quite enthusiastic about this. I've done a lot of research on it.
I'll make more questions.
Yes.
Don't worry. Wow, that's a very detailed events that we had here. Thank you so much. So today, do you think that the role of universities in the internationalization of the city and of course of the academia in as a whole has changed a little from this first vision?
I think it hasn't changed, but there was different stages. And so, like Priscilla just talked about the first decade, the first 7 years of the University of East Asia at that time, it was very international. But in 1988, when the government, Portuguese government bought University of Macau and turned University of Asia to be University of Macau, and there was a kind of mission at that time is to produce or train local talents to become professional and like lawyer, teachers, and for the handover. And so for those, we have some journalist friends here. So it was at that time when the Sino-Portuguese Declaration was signed, and so they agreed that we need to train the local people to govern Macau in the future. So there was like at least one decade until the handover actually. UM became more like localized. And I think the other university like Macau Polytechnic and also IFT, these three universities, they were all coming from University of East Asia. And so they were focused on training locals, I guess. But after the handover and all this university, the the public university, they kind of go back to the original mission of the primary mission of the university. And so we start to talk about internationalize. So I'm actually a witness of this. And I'm now the Center for of Macau Studies. And this center was created by Pauline. So the time after the Sino-Portuguese Declaration was signed, and so Pauline believed that, okay, there should be some kind of research being done for people to understand Macau. And so then they can take it as a reference for the future. So actually, and after the handover, and our center will kind of situate, kind of position in a way to study more about Macau history, to preserve the cultural heritage. We kind of work together with the Macau government. So we want to have the heritage list in the UNESCO, so then we need to do a lot of research on that. But then I think when there's another important person, Professor Yao Weibin, so he took over before, just a few months before the handover. And so I think he was also entrusted with a mission to make the become more internationalized after the handover, because after that, okay, we need to train the locals. At the same time, we also need to show our face to the world. And I think all other universities, we might have the same steps. So there was more than 1 decade, they focused on training. Basically. But after the handover, I think things go smooth, and then people start to do research. And actually, I'm a witness for one thing is about the Center for Macau Studies, and also I was one of the first cohort of the communication major. So I'm the first local trained journalist in Macau, actually. So from University of Macau. And then, and later, I also kind of witnessed how the university, they by bit putting internationalized or research in the middle. And so in 2012, I joined the program to go to Cambridge. And actually there was a exchange visiting scholarship program created by Yao Weibin. So he was the one, he went there, and then he created a kind of agreement with University of Cambridge. And so then we start to send local professors there to become visiting professor and kind of receive some training, and also to broaden our network. And so he did a lot of groundwork in 10 years. Like on one hand, we still kind of still producing a lot of local professionals, but at the same time, the University of Macau spent quite a lot of resources, send us out. So I think that was a way to make us internationalized. So sometimes we go out, sometimes we bring people in. So I think for the almost 10 years of rectorship of Professor Yeo, and so he did a lot of those groundwork. And later, when we have the other two rector coming in, Professor Zhang Wei and also the current rector Song, and so they start to have the resources, or resources of guests to say that now we want to go to the world ranking. And so then you know that we entered the QS and also the THG ranking, starting from, we were listed in like 400, within 400 and 300, and now within 200. So I think this is what we've been kind of growing. And I can also see that it's not only about But university, between us, we all have some kind of subtle competition, right? You don't talk about that, but I look at you, okay, now you're 200, and so maybe I need to at least, so 300. So we kind of not copy, we just follow with each other, and when we have some subtle, friendly competition. And so I think now internationalize is a key term, or a key function, a key mission for all of the University of Macau now.
And speaking of that, we had a very difficult period not so long ago with the pandemic, and I wanted to understand if the collaborations with other universities and of course the international students, what was the impact that the pandemic had, and also if the digital resources that we had in Macau were enough to mitigate the majority of the problems or obstacles that the pandemic brought to Macau. So, Priscilla, if you would like to start.
Well, perhaps the answer to that is yes and no. At the beginning, COVID just shut down most of the exchanges that had been going on. I think that I ran one of the last conferences in January of 2020 on Chinese economic statecraft in the 80s that actually brought people in just for 3 or 4 days, some of them perhaps even less than that, to take part in person in a big international event. And for the next couple of years, really, practically nothing happened, and it became rather difficult even to collaborate with colleagues at other universities. There were patches of time, long patches, when I wanted to go over to another university library in Macau to look at probably some book related to the history back in the 80s of the University of East Asia. And they literally weren't letting anybody on their campuses, not even people from another university. And so I was going online. I mean, some of these books are rather difficult to find. So I was watching very carefully online for when they would actually relax the restrictions and let people in, obviously with our green and yellow and red codes doing what they were supposed to. So that made even seeing colleagues from different universities rather difficult. And as I recall, we went through one patch where we were reasonably open, and then things got really, really tight for a while. By that time, however, we were getting better, I think, with digital technology in the sense of being able, knowing how to do an online meeting. I was in Princeton when things got really bad here, and City University proclaimed that we were all going to learn how to teach online through something called Teams, and we were going to do this within 2 weeks. So I was doing research in Princeton by day, a trip that had been intended to be 8 days, stretched out, I think, to 7 weeks before COVID really hit in the US, and I managed to get on a flight back just before the prices went up 3 or 4-fold from hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars. And by that time, I'd already been teaching for 3 or 4 weeks online. I managed to make it back here and didn't even have to miss one online class. I got in just before quarantine became mandatory for coming in from the United States. So I was in my office the afternoon that I got back in Macau. Well, we got much better at doing online events, inviting people to give online lectures to our students. As for the so I think we became far more skilled at managing technologically to meet people from around the world, to hold online or semi-online conferences, to make up for the way things had been. At the same time, I was lucky in that when I came here, I not only had access to whatever resources, digital resources, were available in Macau, but I was able, because I'm a retiree from the University of Hong Kong, I still have access to their library. And so usually when I was working on a project, I could hack into their resources. I also have become pretty good at knowing what is available online elsewhere around the world. And in the last 10 years, libraries have been, and archives have been digitizing a lot of their resources, so that places where once I would have to go and do research in person, I can now find a lot of material online. I'd already become something of an expert on that when I moved to Macau, because frankly, the libraries in Macau, they're not bad, but they're nothing like Hong Kong U, which I had been building up their library for 30 years in terms of books, microfilms, and eventually digital resources. Since then, I think the libraries in Macau have become more conscious of these resources, and I've also conducted workshops for people on what you can find online for teaching and research. I could do you one, for example, on the Cold War. I could do you one on Macau. I worked on an encyclopedia, doing the documents volume for an encyclopedia of the Middle East. You might think that's not something you're going to find it very easy to do in Macau. Middle Eastern wars from ancient Egypt, or actually from Sargon of Akkad up to the present. So I became much more conscious of these resources when I moved to Macau. I do a lot of research in international history. We were updating an encyclopedia of the Cold War. I wasn't the chief editor, but the chief editor had worked with me on more than a dozen projects. So when I said, for a collection of documents on the Cold War that I did after I moved to Macau, I'd actually put together a bibliography of online resources. Would you be interested? And he said, yes, of course, he would love to include it in his encyclopedia. So I was lucky in a way in that I'd become, in the previous 6 or 7 years, very conscious of what was available, both through commercial databases to which the universities subscribe, but also through materials that can often be obtained freely online. Not always, but very often. And sometimes it's worth even subscribing to one of these. I am working on a project right now about the 1874 typhoon, and I've actually taken out a subscription to something called newspapers.com, which has brought together, partly in fact for purposes of genealogical research, several thousand newspapers from around the world, particularly, though not exclusively, from the Anglophone world. And so I keep on finding out more and more, which I then tend to share with my friends and my students.
You need to share the newspapers.com with us. I think we would all appreciate that one.
Oh, it's great. From the late 18th century right into the 21st.
Okay. Agnes, what was your experience during the pandemic?
Yeah, my answer would be also like yes and no, because I think in the beginning everyone's faced the same problem, so everything's shut down, and so we just cancel everything. But slowly then after we have all kind of online conference apps, okay. So I think we start to have online conferences, talks, seminar. I think for the part of presentation, okay, it wasn't really affected later. And so we were able to deliver class through Zoom, right? But then I think one thing really missing is that before if we have international conference, we're not only there to present a paper and we hang out with people, right? And then when you hang out with people, you talk and then we chill and then there will be some other topics coming up. And so then we can have all kinds of brokering and then maybe we collaborate in this and that. And so then we will have some joint paper with people. And also through all those kind of in-person conversation, you will get a lot of idea from others, and then that helps a lot to for cooperation and also for self growth as well. But I think when you're doing everything online, the problem is like teaching. In the beginning, we hate that because no student would turn on the camera. You are basically talking to a dark hole there, okay? And later you need to keep telling this. My case is that please, some of you, one of you, at least one person, show your face, make me feel less lonely, and then I don't know if I can. Because my lecture is 3 hours long, and so it's very hard for people to focus. And also later, I also find that if I'm attending conference online, because I can also turn off the camera, right? So I can just listen to it and then writing email, you know what I mean? And so actually the quality of communication or the effect is quite low, I can say. So that's why I just say that maybe the presentation part is okay. There was even one time I was actually the keynote of a conference, and so I opened the camera, I talked, and finished. I was very happy. Then I want to check people's comment. Then I find the comment is that okay, it's freeze. Okay, we can't hear you, and then please check your WeChat, and then we can hear you. And then and I was speaking like 15 minutes, enjoying myself like this, that. And then I found actually maybe after 1 minute, nobody see me or listen to me. So, okay, we had all kind of technological problems still. And so, but I think I feel good. Okay, if I didn't check the comment, maybe I will force that everyone listen to my talk. And actually nobody. And so, so I said we miss a chance to meet with people, talk with people, communicate, and get idea from others, and also inspired by others. I think we miss that because it would be very hard for us to do online. So it's very hard that okay, I saw someone presenting, and then I private message the person. It's very interesting. Can we have a talk later? It's hard. How are you going to chat? So it's still kind of through online. It just I think our generation are not equipped with that kind of habit yet, or we just I don't know, I cannot do it. And so but I think now with when everything is open again, we can go back and we can now hang out here. We're happy, so we see each other, and so after the talk we can have some time to chill and then to talk, and so then we can have some kind of follow-up cooperation, and that's how we build international network actually. So so during the pandemic, what we lost is that kind of chances to build the international network. But you can do something that is very well planned. Actually, I work with the University Lisboa on one project, and actually they planned the project. They want to understand investigate the middle class housing in all the Portuguese settlement colony, and so they need a partner in Macau to work on that. And so then they contact Julian, and Julian contact me, and then we have a small team, and then we study several residential building in Macau, and actually we interview people to understand their experience during the COVID, living in that kind of that kind of style of residential building. And so, but that you need to plan for the research first, and then you find one person to execute or collaborate. And so it's different from when we have international conference or when we have a chance to meet up with people.
It started with the pandemic, but the reality is that Macau entered a new phase of development, right? So we have these 7 emerging industries, and one of which is the cultural industry. I would like to understand how the universities look at this guidelines, let's say, and do they adapt to this new phase of development? Do they stay the same? How does it work?
Actually, when you're talking about cultural industry, this is already like maybe I think starting from Edmund Hall, they talk about that already, and so and then now 3 chief executives will also talk about that. I remember like at least 10 years ago, I don't remember the exact timing, but when we first understand that the government is putting cultural industry in their policy address, and I'm from Department of Communication, and actually we study about that, and we believe we are the closest, department with that. And so there was once we were talking with the university management to see if we should have a new program titled culture management, culture industry something, But later, after we kind of investigate the possibility and the resources we need to put in, we basically kind of dropped the idea, so we cannot have a new program. We can have one course. And then actually we have this course now, and then we offer that course. But we will also kind of, once the government have that kind of policy, actually we can use it to kind of negotiate more resources. So we discussed with university and saying that actually filming, video production is part of the cultural industry. So then we need more money to buy equipment. We need to train more students. And I can say that now quite a big number of production houses in Macau, they are owned by our graduates, actually. So it was starting from the time when the Macau government wanted to have the cultural industry. So I think usually it's like when there is a policy, when the government want to do something, and so as a university, the management, they might have some thought, and then they will talk to your different deans and department heads, and then later we will have some internal meetings to understand or investigate if we can offer anything. But for a degree program or master picture, picture is easy for one person. But for degree program, especially for undergraduate program, it's very, very expensive. So I think a lot of time what we are doing, at least at the University of Macau, is that we can launch some short-term training program. So like when the government talking about we should have more people working in the new financial industry, then we can offer some short-term training program offering by the continuing education center or some of the faculty. They can also offer some diploma program, and so to kind of train people. So that's how we are handling this kind of policy-related, should we say, request? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So when we understand this kind of policy, that's how we follow it up. Yeah.
Do you have a similar reflection in your university?
Well, the universities, both Macau universities at which I've worked, have programs in design, for example. I do know that in the early years of the University of Macau, the government and Stanley Ho both gave quite a lot of money for the building of the 2 big, the convention center and the cultural center, because Macau had no big halls for either very big public lectures or big cultural events. And in fact, when the International Music Festival started, which was back in 1987, and I believe that Madame Soares attended, half the events actually took place in the University of Macau. It helped to kickstart cultural events, cultural life in Macau, it also brought in a critical mass of people who had interests in music, in drama, in art, in Chinese art and calligraphy. The great Chinese scholar Jiao Tsung-yi, who's actually got a museum in his honor here, as well as, well, he spent most of his career in Hong Kong, but he spent several years at the University of East Asia. But there were a lot of amateur or semi-amateur activities going on, drama productions, music concerts, play readings, a photography club. These events, a lot of them came into being because of the University of Macau, because in their spare time, a professor of accounting, for example, was also very keen on literature and drama, or Bunny Mellor had at one stage, before becoming a university registrar, considered becoming a concert pianist instead. So these were people often with interests which went beyond simply what they were actually teaching. And the university also had the best bookshop in Macau, certainly the best Western bookshop. Again, that added an element to Macau's life that simply had not been there before. So it's not always just the pressure from government that makes this happen. Obviously, the money to help build the convention centre and cultural centre was very useful, and I believe the government sponsored the International Music Festival. But this was the beginning of a decade when money was beginning to come into the casinos as well, and being set aside through the Macau Foundation and the Cultural Institute to fund more and more cultural activities. So it all has a snowball effect at that time. Macau was building more museums, the Cultural Centre, the Macau Museum, the Macau Art Museum. I'm not sure when the Taipa houses were redone, but old buildings were basically being not tarted up, renovated, and made into cultural heritage centres of one kind or another as well. So this in turn creates a demand for programs in architecture, programs in design, programs in tourism and heritage, which aren't necessarily simply training people to work in the hotels and catering in the casinos, but also to run museums, to run cultural events, to run a music festival, for example. I think you get the setting up of the Macau Chinese Orchestra around this time. They need stage managers. They need people who know something about production and scenery and design. So you have this constant interchange between all these different activities, what is, I believe, known as a creative synergy.
And for all these programs that we start creating, how important do you think it is the cultural and the academic exchange with other universities, also to broaden the mindsets of the students?
I think There are several paths that if we want to connect culture and academic exchange, university and internationalization together. And so one thing like when we actually like University of Macau, we are always like diversified, and we have teaching staff from basically all around the world, especially in our faculty of social science. And so we used to call us like a little UN, you know, we have people from US, UK, and Australia, South Africa, and basically all those kind of major country. And we have, for Chinese, we have from locals, Hong Kong, mainland China, Taiwan. So, so one thing for the student to be like a more kind of understand different culture, I think to receive education from professor from different countries would be already a good way. And so, and that's one thing. Another one is that, like Priscilla just talked about, that University of Macau, we organize a lot of cultural exchange activity, or just like basic cultural activity like music festival and drama. And I still remember when I was still a high school student, my first time to visit University of Macau, at that time we were still University of East Asia. I was like, I was in the dancing group of my high school. So we were asked to perform at the University of Macau, where those university students, they were performing Romeo and Juliet. I still remember the first time I saw Romeo and Juliet was at the University of Macau. And so I saw all those university students at that time, look at them, oh, this is the university life. And then you can play a drum, you can perform like that. I wanted to go to the university. And that was my first time when I thought, okay, I can experience something that's very different. So I can read, you know, drama from Shakespeare. I can understand some English literature. And so that is a chance that you can open your eyes to different culture. And so I think over the years, all the university were doing this, and then we let the students, they organize their own events, and then there will be some high rank event organized, maybe the faculty of the university, and even some government activity using the university hall as a major venue. And so that's another level. But I also think that nowadays, with as we are having more collaboration with different universities, our student or any student, local student or student from US Macau, they also get more chances to collaborate with students or professors from the other university. So like in the past few years, we have several research projects. And so even that our center, we have one project, we work with another 15 universities. And so then the students, they get to enter a group. It's an email group only because of the pandemic, right? But we just read everyone's comment on the same paper, questionnaire, and so then they have the chance to understand, you know, different style. And also, of course, because this kind of cooperation, later we are all better or more skillful in using different kind of software to make things efficient. So, for example, in the beginning, we used the Word format and everyone leave in comment. And then later there are too many comments, you cannot read it, and then nobody know how to handle the next phase. Then later we understand that there is the Microsoft 360, and you should do it. And then we can editing things online together without leaving too many comments there, and so we can talk, you know. And so we also learn to use some new technology to make this kind of international cooperation in next level. And also when we are kind of cooperating with the other people, and it would be very easy, our student and even myself would benefit from this kind of, you know, very strict dialogues. Like, for example, I'm Chinese, right, obviously. So we are more polite in another way when we want to express our opinion, because we're trained in this way. So for example, if I want to say that I do not agree, I will say that, hey, actually, this is very good, but I think there might be a way to rephrase this sentence. But then if you you leave a sentence that long, nobody's going to read it. What are you going to say? So can you be straightforward? And so then we need to say, oh, sometimes when you have 10 people reading the same thing together, and then we just need to leave all those kind of unnecessary information. Okay, stick to the point. This is also culture. Okay, we need to learn, or we need to adopt some kind of working culture that we can collaborate with other people efficiently. This culture, but at the same time, we also kind of, I just said, okay, I'm trying to, we were trained to be very polite. But then later, I also find that there will be some other people, I don't name from the country. There will be some other people, they are super polite. And so then we have maybe always like two group of people, they're super polite, they want to say nice things first. And then we have some people very proactive, straightforward. And then I think everyone were there learning different issues as well. And one more, I think one more category I can say that we can kind of bring culture internationalize together is that I think all this kind of research cooperation or try to publish on the international journal also help us to look at the local issue or local culture from a different perspective. For example, you can see that when we need to internationalize, at the same time, we also need to serve the local Macau. We also need to do some research about Macau. Then you can Google or go to the database. You can find that there are a lot more high-ranked articles. They're talking about Macau experience. They study maybe the Macau heritage, and the Macau food, Macanese food. They become a keywords now on journal papers now. So people study about that, and so you see that how can you? I think 10 years ago, maybe 10 or 20 years ago, nobody can imagine that maybe the dajo that we're eating there would be like 3 scholars studying about that different recipe and write about the experience about everything. And also so that is also like when we're putting some local culture to the sport of the international academic exchange. And so we can also see that there is a stage or platform that we're presenting some local culture there. And so now our students, once they understand that, even that you're writing about Macau, you're writing about some very historical, the historical side, or even, how Macau students are using AI in their in plagiarizing or in their kind of paper. And so you can also kind of try to present in the international platform, all those academic journals. I think this is also how we can bridge local culture or different culture diversification, university and international together. Mm-hmm. So I think then we can look at it from different angles. Yeah.
Macau internationalization can be a very broad concept, right? So sometimes it can easily become very abstract and not produce maybe concrete results. Macau has special links with Portuguese-speaking countries, to name a few. And I would like to understand how we can use these links to fully excel in this network creation.
Well, I didn't know very much about Portuguese-speaking countries before I came here, but I was lucky at City U that I was in a faculty, the Faculty of Business, where they were making real efforts to expand these kind of links. And I also became very friendly with Francisco Leandro, who is now with you, but was at that time in the Portuguese speaking institute at City U. So in the Faculty of Business, they became very skilled at entrepreneurship contests, bringing together students, in one case from Brazil and Macau, and I think possibly from other Portuguese-speaking countries as well, to work on projects, sustainability projects for businesses related to the Amazon. And these were teams of students who had to work, they had to be drawn from 2 or 3 different Portuguese-speaking countries, including Macau. And so they had to work with students from Brazil, or maybe from Mozambique, or from Portugal itself, in working on a joint project which they would then present and which would be judged. And some of our students were in prize-winning teams. This was the elite program that I was in charge of, so I was, of course, very proud of them. And then our dean went and set up, José Alves set up what was, I think, at first the 828 and is now the 928
yeah.
entrepreneurial competition for teams of entrepreneurs at both the student and also the startup level from across the Portuguese-speaking countries and China. And that has now become a big event in Macau. Well, I was in the office next to him, and I saw how much effort he had to put into that at the beginning, with not terribly much support initially from the university. Often these events are the product of 1 or 2 enthusiasts who are prepared to put the sweat equity into it, and he had just one or two other people working with him, to my relief, because I didn't want him to absolutely wear himself out. And for those weeks when they were looking at the initial projects, over 100 of them, I think, the last time around, they were extremely busy judging these. But this was a great experience in internationalization for the students. In terms of the Institute of Portuguese-speaking countries, they had students drawn from across the different Portuguese-speaking countries as well as China, very often working together in teams and also working together in teams sometimes drawn from more than one university. I've also I wasn't allowed to be one of the judges at the English-speaking business contest because we had people in that from my own university. But I was involved with that for several years and encouraged our students to compete with students from the other universities, some and later from other universities in Malaysia. And I think that was a very good learning experience for them. I have to admit that when I first came to City University, when they wanted to do a video featuring international students, they borrowed a couple from UMac because virtually all our students were Chinese. So that was actually rather funny. And I was there as one of their rather few international teachers, but over time they've got rather more
teachers as well for the video.
No, they got me, and I think they'd got one other, and then Francisco came. But they have become more international over time. But yes, sometimes the publicity materials are a bit more advanced than the actual situation, but they do at least speak to aspirations. And I saw this as well, in Hong Kong. over the years. When I came to Hong Kong, about 98% of the students at Hong Kong U were local Chinese. And over the years, that changed, and they became much more international. And this was not simply because local people who would once have sent their children overseas were willing to send them to Hong Kong U, but they also set up exchange programs for a semester or a year with other universities, so that at any given time you might see in your classes students literally from around the world. I think that they had exchange programs by the time I left with over 150 different universities. I know this because the associate dean in the office next to me at one point in the 2010s was working out credit transfer arrangements with more than 150 different universities. There were still sometimes disasters, but and it takes a lot logistically, but I think by the time I left, 10% or more of our students were going overseas, and probably for a semester or a year, and vice versa. We had a very much more diverse student body. We're attracting more students from elsewhere as well who wanted to come and study with us, particularly at the graduate level. And these students were coming from the United States, they were coming from Canada, they were coming from Singapore, they were coming from Australia, some of them Chinese, but many of them not. And sometimes also we started some joint degree PhD programs with other universities. So it can be done. It takes time, and obviously it takes money. Sometimes you just swap the fees. If you take so many of our students, we'll take so many of yours. But there are also travel costs involved, some to be borne by the parents or the students themselves, sometimes borne by the universities. And they also set up programs whereby you mentioned that you went on one of these to Cambridge. They also set up similar programs for staff from different universities. I've spent time at King's College London, for example, on one of these, and they had a number of these set up by the 2000s. But it does take time. You don't just wave a wand overnight, but over 5 years or 10 years, you can see an appreciable difference.
Agnes, I would like to talk on the other side, which is GBA, right? If we're talking about aspirations and the time it takes maybe to coordinate collaborated development. And I would appreciate if you would be a little short because we are now running out of time. And I would like to make a general question for us to be a little bit more brief. So what do you think are the challenges now with the Greater Bay Area development for the Macau universities?
I think actually for the Macau University, we kind of see it as an opportunity because like we are giving a piece of land, and so we are going to build another campus in the Hengqin area. So I think that one is announced already by the university, and so we are going to recruit. Not actually, we have recruited students for several different disciplines, basically in construction, engineering, and also some Chinese medicine, in several major areas. And so we have recruited postgraduate students already. So we will have a new campus there. And so our university look at it as an opportunity because now once we are allowed to recruit students there, that means we are able to recruit more students from the whole area, mainland China. So we are expanding in a way. And so I think that if we are not talking about all other universities, I think what I understand is that quite a number of universities in Macau are also given that piece of land. So that will be a new area in the Hengqin zone. Okay, and so I think each university are going to already permitted to recruit students at different area. Yeah. So we kind of look at it as an opportunity, and also I think later, we know that China is going to make central government is going to make the GBA as another driving force, economic driving force for another decades. So I'm seeing that that area is kind of full of potential, and so if we are able to extend Macau, maybe not really physically, but maybe, I don't know, culturally, higher educationally, or platforming, we can use the different borderline. So not only the physical borderline, but other borderline, we have that in concept. So we are able to make the Greater Bay Area more internationalized through Macau and Hong Kong and some other places. And I think that will benefit everyone actually, because we all know that GBA include Macau and Hong Kong, so we have different judicial system. But at the same time, because of this Macau and Hong Kong, we kind of connect with two major parts of the world. Mm-hmm. And so if we are able to extend our border, I would still say our border in different way, but not the physical one. Because the physical one is a bit sensitive. But if we are talking about the culture or kind of system, or even some judicial area or some practice there, and so I think there will be a new international, I don't know, conjunction for the East and West.
That is actually the last question that I wanted to make, is to understand what are the challenges, of this new cross-jurisdictional borders and the collaborations that you do with the university.
Actually, I think we have a lot of talks about that, but the most important thing is like we need to learn from Deng Xiaoping, and so we need to have some good example first. So people need to try, because we know that, we are from different system, we have different law, we have different culture, we have different things. But if we just keep standing there or sitting there and say, we're different. Okay, we know there's potential, but we're different. Then nothing will happen. Okay, we're different, but then we start to have a drink first. Then we drink and then start, after the drink maybe we can have a meal, And so I think we need to start from something that would be easy. It didn't involve a lot of changes from our own system, but we can work together. So like, for example, now I think this is a good move that the universities, they're going to have their new campus in Hengqin. And so we need to work on some kind of regulation, how to recruit mainland students in that area. Then we start to have, we bring some professors from UM and other universities cross the border and teach there. So there might be some, I don't know, something would happen, I guess. And also once you have a campus, university campus area there, you are going to have a little shops, restaurant for the students, for the professors. We also need to eat, right? And then, I think slowly there a new community will grow there. And then if we are able to bring some foreign investment or bring some other, talents from other countries to, they can have a, I don't know, maybe not factory, different company to hire those university graduates that may not be locals, maybe from mainland China, from other places. Then you're going to build a new city there. That's what I thought. But we need to start from something that's small, but work.
Common ground.
Yeah.
Find the common ground.
Yeah.
Would you like to add anything else very quickly?
Well, having until I moved to USJ, been working almost 100% with mainland students, very bright mainland students, I would say that they are keen to come to Macau, in part because they see it as much more international than China. Many of them who start as undergraduates had aspirations, very often successful, to go on to graduate studies elsewhere in Australia, the United States, Britain, Canada, Hong Kong, Singapore. Last year, of my class of 21 students, all of them got accepted to good universities for graduate study, for further studies. The students in China seem to value international experience. I know that some of them seem to be learning lessons from me. I was teaching them not just English, but it was in some ways, I think, serving as a life coach, giving them confidence to apply, particularly maybe among the young women. I was often the first foreigner they'd had very much to do with, and I know that some of them said how kind I was as a teacher, and they'd not had somebody like that before. And some of the young women, I think, also took me as a role model, having gone to Cambridge as one of the first women admitted at King's, such a long time ago, of course, now. They seemed to like my style. You don't really know what lessons exactly they're learning from you, but I know from my own experience, I have sometimes watched how other people do things and then followed that model myself. So I think there's a great deal of opportunity for this kind of cross-cultural learning, and I also learnt a lot from my students too. It could be a great opportunity for Macau. Going back almost to the old model, whereby Macau was doing a great deal for students from beyond, offshore students from beyond Macau, and serves as a magnet that can attract people from well beyond.
Thank you. So traditionally, we open the session to the public for some Q&A. So if someone wants to ask a question, not to me, to Agnes and Priscilla.
Agnes, sometimes in intercultural relations and exchanges are not so easy as we may think. I had this experience 10 years ago opening a bilingual newspaper, right? Many Portuguese friends were thinking, why are you going to the Chinese community? I know you have tried on your political platform to bring Portuguese to your platform. I would like to know if currently these gaps are being fulfilled, or if the obstacles, the social and the preconcepts are still here. And on the other hand, if I would like to understand, I know the universities are being pushed for regional integration and to bet on Enching. I would like to know if from the policies and from the management, you can also feel this pushing for the internationalization of Macau.
So I think for the first questions, I cannot really generalize it because for intercultural communication, I think we have a term actually we call intercultural competence. So that will go to an individual level. So some people, they can really cope with different culture and they can accept that people are different, but then they can still talk with each other. But of course, when we're talking about things we fell on the individual level, we're also talking about there will be some kind of collective effort on that. So maybe through education, once we teach enough, then okay, we should talk to each different people that are different from you. And so that's an way. And the third level is that we have some kind of cultural memory. Cultural memory would also be part of our cultural competence. So I don't know, because you are all living here in Macau, I have experience going to maybe Europe, some very small town where I'm the only Chinese. And I also been accompanying some of my colleagues to mainland China, maybe some very rural part doing research there. So I can see that because I was born here and grew here. So I've been seeing Portuguese all in my life when I was a child. So maybe in the very first beginning when I was very little, I said, oh, they're different. But very, very soon we kind of get used to that. We have neighbors that they are different from us. So I won't look at you like this, like, so being a foreigner in any part of the world, if people are not trained well, they will look at you, make you feel very uncomfortable, right? But here in Macau, I think for the Portuguese, you never really look at the Chinese like this, and then the Chinese will never look at you like this. We don't do that. But it's very easy for us to have this kind of experience when we are in other places. So I think this is something I always want to tell people from China. Macau is very important because people here, we have some cultural competence. We know how to make people that are different from us to feel at least comfortable. We may not be proactive enough to start a conversation because of the language barrier, but at least I won't look at you to make you feel like you're a monster, stranger, or something, yeah, not good. I still remember I talked to one researcher from the UN University who was here a few years ago, and so she's from Africa, and she told me that all her life, whenever she walked on the street, people were like looking at her like this. And Macau is the most comfortable city that she's ever been. I mean, in Asia, not of course she should feel comfortable at home. So, and actually, when she told me, I was like, wow, yeah, that's true. That's something very important. But I think that we need to work harder to make this a publishable paper. This is just my observation, but I never know how maybe Priscilla can help, and then we can try to write something about that. So then I think yeah, so that would be easy. So when you're talking about if I try to bring Portuguese in my list before, and then I try to bridge everything, I think that is also part of my effort. I believe that Macau is very unique. A lot of people we know, but we are not able to really summarize our experience and how to tell other people if we want to integrate with anyone, how to make other people comfortable, and then we can work together. So I think we are not generalizing this enough. And so as the case in Macau now, so I would just say that maybe collectively, because we are not aware of what we know or what we're skillful, in. So we don't have enough collective effort to make people to bridge all the gaps. We are not making enough efforts, but I think we need to work on that. But for individuals, we would have more young people. I think because of internet, social media, and then they are able to make friends with people from everywhere from the world, and so they might be more open. But for the kind of older generation, because we don't have enough policy to address this issue, I think situation, I cannot say worse, but it's not improving a lot, or we're not aware of what we should do collectively. So that's one thing. And the second one about the integration, I think everyone feel it. So this is going to be a new direction, and so but we don't really see like I think like I just said that at the US level, we kind of look at it as an opportunity to expand our school, our song actually influence on song. So we're looking at that in a way. But I think when we're thinking about integration, I think one important way to look at it is that we don't just say that we are going there. I think we should also look at, when we're talking about integrated, we should also think of how to bring people here. Okay, so when people are complaining that everyone's driving to the north, right? So we should think of different ways to bring people back to Macau, but bring what kind of people here? I think I received your interview before, and I've been thinking like, if the tourists that are coming, if we want to tell them, okay, aside from going to the in Taiwan, okay, we also want you to go to the north and anywhere. And so, but what are we going to show those people? I think we are not exploring enough of this topic. But I always believe that if the tourists that are coming here to find Macau, things that have the characteristic of Macau, maybe the 16th century of Macau, 17th century, we need to be very creative to think about that. And maybe that would be a chance. We're not going to sell the wonton noodle at 10 mobs anymore, no more. So then, how about we sell some dajo, okay, in some other way to make people find the motivation to come to Macau, experience something different. Okay, so I think we need to be innovative and creative. And of course, we also need to practical to look at the integration policy. Then we can gain from it and not feeling that we're going to lose from it. Yeah.
Okay. Any other question?
Oh, thank you very much for your interventions and information. That was very interesting. I have a question that I will divide in two. And I know that both of you have already been have covered, because Professor Roberts has been in two universities. We talked about that before. And Agnes, Professor Agnes Lam has also been in Macau University. My question is about, we came from a time where we had one university, East Asia University, to a time where we have three universities, and I'm not counting United Nations University.
Yeah, okay.
But and my question is, how do Macau universities cooperate and relate? You already talk about some competition, which is natural, because everybody wants to have more students, but in other terms, besides the part of the competition, especially when we're talking about relations in the outside of Macau, how good is the cooperation between Macau universities facing that reality? And then another question, that is, how each one of the universities that you know relate in terms of networks with universities across the world, and in which ways that cooperation is made, and how it can contribute or can become better for the internationalization of Macau.
Anyone would like to start?
Well, as I said, I've been at two universities in Macau, but I've also got to know people from other universities as well. City University, in fact, is on a campus where there are parts of both the International Tourism University and MPU, and so just through going to the branch of Lord Stowe's, which alas is now closed, we'd get to know each other. And I think that on the whole, we go to each other's conferences, we go to each other's talks, read each other's books. Yes, there is always a certain element of competition, but I'm just finishing off a chapter for a book that is being edited by Professor Leandro, who is now at UMac. And he wants me to write another a chapter for another book after that. I'm kind of on his list. On Sunday, I plan to go to the City U graduation ceremony to wave off the students whom I taught for 3 years before their graduation. I've been writing letters of recommendation for them all year. A lot of these relationships are relationships that are personal friendships that certainly cut across the different universities. So I don't think that there is a really fierce rivalry between the staff. There may be more among the higher echelons sometimes who are competing for a place in the rankings, or maybe for a building or a site or something like that. But I think that at the actual level of staff relations, this very much depends on individuals.
Okay, I think I share more or less the same experience. So at the individual level, like Professor Robertson came to our conference, and so we would also we would get invited. We would also get to other universities kind of a function. But at the same time, I think because I'm also directing the Center for Macau Studies, so what we've been trying to do in the past few years is also try to bring the international scholar to come to Macau and to start to share their research on Macau. So we organized the annual conference on Macau Studies. The first time we organized it in 2019. So it was just like click. I said, okay, I want to do this. So I didn't have enough time to call for paper internationally. So I did it basically like locally and regionally. But very soon I find that the first conference was basically in Chinese, because that everyone submit abstract in Chinese. And then I started thinking, but maybe I'm missing some perspective from the English speaking or foreigner. And so then from the second one, we kind of organized it in a way together with two journals, Journal of Contemporary Asia and China Information, and so two international journal, and we tried to send out invitation to see if there would be anybody out there international to come. And actually there was a very good experience. We received like 100 submission. So eventually we select 60. But because of pandemic, that conference was postponed to 2022, and we did it kind of hybrid mode, online, and most of the people, the international scholar didn't come, so still only the local were there, but it was okay. And then like last year, we also did hybrid. I think it was because of traveling expenses, because it was just open. Things were expensive. We didn't have a lot of people coming over. But then this year we're going to do it again. So this, like in institutional level, so like I think for the center or the faculty, when they have the resources, we're still doing, at least creating a platform for scholar to exchange idea. And I try to, for Department of Communication, we also, I think we also organize conference to invite people coming over, and then we have the Asia Pacific Communication Forum. So we are also part of that. And so we organize like 4 conferences already. We invite people from Southeast Asia and yeah, Portugal and Spain to come over. So this is like more like institutional level. And there will be some, this is the international, but whenever we organize this kind of event, actually we invite, our practice that we will invite all those professors from the relevant field. We send them invitation, ask them to come, and we might also send them the call for paper. So this is how we kind of collaborate. There will be some other collaboration from the university level, but that would be more or less like policy-wise. Like this year, we have the flag raising ceremony together, and so the first one happening at UMac, and there are also some kind of I think like summer camp, joint summer camp. So different universities they organize together and to attract overseas students, mainland students to coming over. But mostly, I think the most important one now is still on the individual level. So if professors from different universities, we can, we just research on the same topic and then we talk about that, we bring resources together. And so that would be also important for the internationalism of Macau, I guess. Like now if we are going to an international conference, if we want to have a panel, now a lot of those conferences, they have the rule. You cannot have all the panelmen from the same institution. So actually, if we want to have a Macau panel, and I want to have like 3 speakers, I need to have one from UMac, and then the other one need to from the other 2 universities. So this is also some kind of collaboration. So then we need to go out together as a group with people from other universities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other question? No? Okay, thank you all very much for coming. Agnes, thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
For inviting me.
Thank you.
Well, actually, you invited the rector, but he is off travelling somewhere, globe trotting.